Welcome to another Genshin Impact video by your fellow Genshin Impact lover. Today we're going to be talking about which weapon you should choose for your battle pass. Okay, so the first weapon we have is the Black Sword. In my opinion, this is the solid sword to go for. It has sustain and has damage. Most people would probably tell you the same, that this is the weapon to choose. And the thing is, there are a lot of sword users. If you look at the weapon, it just straight up gives you 20% extra damage on your normal and charge attacks. There's no condition. It's always on. So for example, let's compare it to the Solar Pearl. So with the Solar Pearl, you require to either use normal attack to increase your elemental skill or burst damage by 20% or vice versa. So there's slightly more setting up. And then there's also a time limit, 6 seconds to how long it lasts. It's just straight up, it's just very obviously good. It's just very clearly good. There's nothing complex about it. It doesn't try to complicate anything. 20% damage is a lot, right? And on top of that, it heals. It regenerates 60% of your attack. That's crazy. That's actually quite a lot. And it occurs every 5 seconds. So that's pretty short, right? That means it can happen pretty often, right? It has increased crit rate. And so this is pretty much a really good weapon. Alright, next up we have Serpent Spine. And I would say, straight up, just don't get this video. This is kind of a bad weapon. Firstly, we already have Prototype Amunis, and even the Debate Club is kind of lit. It's kind of really good. But anyways, so with this weapon, the character has to be on the field for 4 seconds before the first stack happens. And sure, it won't be reset if the character leaves the field, but every time the character takes damage, you lose 1 stack. The stress of having to avoid getting hit, not only do you have to avoid getting hit, but if you do get hit, you take more damage, right? That's just really, it's too much. It's high risk and low reward, and it's just, this is the only BP weapon that has a punishing mechanic. And then yes, the damage is nice. But for example, let's say you want to use it on Diluc. Diluc already raises his crit rate whenever he ascends, so it kind of becomes redundant. And then let's say, for example, you want to use it on Razor. With Razor, because of how his burst works, so his Q, particularly how he's less likely to get interrupted during burst, it might make you, or it makes me, want to be a bit more ham. I kind of just go more aggressive, and I can kind of ignore the little things. But if you do that with this weapon, then you lose damage. So it doesn't really fit with Razor's playstyle either. It doesn't fit with Diluc because it gets crit rate. And yeah, I don't know. Next up we have the Solar Pearl. This weapon is the other weapon that's really nice, but I guess you could say it's kind of overshadowed by the Black Sword. But it could actually be the better or the best weapon of choice. It's good because when you're optimizing damage, which means that you would be weaving in attacks and skills. For example, with Ningguang, you do your normal attack and then you cancel it into your wall, and then you can kind of cancel that back into your normal, and then you cancel that into your Q. So by doing that, you're optimizing damage, and when you optimize damage, the Solar Pearl rewards you by optimizing your damage even further. Not only does it increase your normal attack, right, but it also increases your elemental skill and elemental burst, compared to the Black Sword, which only increases your normal attack and charge attacks, which means that it doesn't increase your skill or your burst, right? So just keep that in mind. It's like it's something I can imagine people easily missing. Another example is that if we compare it to, for example, the Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds, which is the 5-star book, right? So I'm just going to call it LPSW. So LPSW takes at least 12 seconds to get the 24% elemental damage boost. 12 seconds. And then every time you switch out, you lose that. Right? Whereas with the Solar Pearl, you can instantly, the moment you normal attack, your elemental skill is instantly working. It's much better for when you play the switch in, switch out style, which is, in my opinion, how you should be playing this game. It's just too much value when you take advantage of all the available skills when they're on cooldown. And then of course, because it's a 5-star, it'll be harder to refine. Whereas the Solar Pearl will most likely be the easier one to refine. So I think this one might actually be really powerful. Next up, we have the Viridescent Hunt. And this bow is kind of complex. It's very wordy, and it has all these numbers here and there. But basically, TLDR would be that I don't think it's that good, especially when compared to the Solar Pearl and the Black Sword, when you're given the options. So firstly, the damage is physical, by the way. It's not an emote, just in case you might get that mixed up, which can be good or bad. It requires for you to use a normal or aim shot, and it's only a 50% chance of activating the Cyclone. So let's say you're using a support and you switch in. You normally don't really want to use your normal attacks or aim shots, right? You're just switching in using the skill, switching out. For example, with Venti, just switch in, do your Q, then do your E to build up some more gauge, and switch out. But with this, you have to attack maybe multiple times to activate the Cyclone effect. So it's kinda delaying your DPS. But that being said, for example, let's say you want to main Child. This may be a good bow for him. Although, there are already many other good bows. We have the Stringless, we have Rust, we have Compound Bow. And now let's analyze the Cyclone effect, right? So the Cyclone does have a vacuum effect, and it holds well. So when they go into the Cyclone, they do seem to stay in quite nicely. It seems to have a strong pull, but that's only when they're inside. It doesn't actually pull mobs from the outside, compared to, for example, Sucrose's skill, where there's a slight vacuum effect even from outside her circle, and I think her circle is bigger. On top of that, the Cyclone only lasts for 4 seconds, which is kind of long, but not long enough, I guess. Personally, I would rather just get more damage, because Venti's Q is 8 seconds if I recall correctly, and then Sucrose's Q becomes 10 seconds once she gets her Constellation 2. So yeah, this bow is kind of lackluster, and again, there are just many other bows. One thing, however, to take note of is that the cooldown, so how many times you can activate the Cyclone, decreases as you increase the refinement. As you can see how the number is blue. So maybe it could be really strong later on, especially again for Char. Lastly, we have the Deathmatch. Alright, this weapon is really iffy. The fact that we only have one polearm user at the moment, Xiangling, makes it so that don't know if it's worth using. There aren't many pole users, so if you start basically getting too many polearms, there's not many people for you to pretty much hand me down the weapon. And so if this weapon becomes not so good, or if you get a better weapon even, then you might just have wasted so many resources, right? And then the Crescent Pike is also really strong. It just does so much more damage, I would say, in general. So let's look at the Crescent Pike, right? It has physical damage bonus, that's amazing. And then after picking up an elemental orbital particle, your normal and charge attacks deal an additional 20% damage for 5 seconds. It's just really nice, and then you can refine it because this is the craftable weapon. So yeah, I'm not so sure about the Deathmatch. For example, let's say we look at Zhongli. He might scale with defense, but we don't know. I think we kind of suspect, or it's kind of expected, that he will be scaling with HP. But the defense area is not so certain, and we might not find out in time if he scales with defense to choose this weapon and make it worthwhile. Not only that, but again, Crescent Pike is good. So I don't really see much reason to use this weapon, or to pick this weapon. In conclusion, I would either recommend the Black Sword or the Solar Pearl. I have a personal preference for the Solar Pearl, but the Black Sword seems like the safer choice for most people, and again, there are 7 sword users. Right. I like the Solar Pearl because I feel a lot of potential from it, but who knows, I could be wrong. And also, I don't really use sword users, so I have mainly Claymore as my main DPS. And pretty much the other weapons I just wouldn't really recommend. It's a bit risky to waste that choice. And then the last thing is, a lot of this also depends on whether the next battle pass will give the same weapons, which I feel that it will, based on my experience with previous gacha games. It's kind of, most gacha games, you gotta play it for the long game, and so the battle pass giving the same weapons again is like playing the long game. And so I think we can expect, most likely, I could be wrong, but most likely it will be the same weapons again, so you know, you get the next one and you refine it, and yeah. Alright, and that is it. I hoped that this video gave you enough information for you to make your choice in what weapon to pick. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!